Hi my friends, welcome to this video. I'm actually welcoming a lot of new people to my channel, so if we've only recently met, hi, I'm Brooke and I have been a full-time artist for the past 9 years, selling my paintings and prints, and in the past 2 or 3 years I have been making videos about art and artistic life here on YouTube. I always feel kind of nervous after getting a little bit of an influx of new subscribers because I'm like,
it's time to perform.
But at the same time, I'm like, okay, girl, you don't need that kind of pressure on yourself, so we are going to be conducting business as usual and just discussing the topics that I feel like talking about at this point in time. And today's topic, AI. So, as an artist, the topic of AI is quite a controversial one, as I'm sure you already know, and honestly, I don't typically like discussing it, mostly because, well, I'm not an expert on this particular topic, and I perhaps don't have as polarizing of an opinion about it as others do, and I like to avoid conflict. But recently another artist reached out to me and asked if I could share my thoughts, and after hearing her story, I felt motivated to do so. In her message, she said, I would love to hear your take on AI-generated images as reference photos. I'm using Midjourney right now to help with making references, but I can't help but feel like a fraud. Am I? Is this cheating somehow? A friend of mine was really negative when I told him the reference I used came from AI. He felt that if he's gonna buy original art, he'd want every aspect of that painting to come from the artist. The idea that the painting was derived out of something created by AI really turned him off. So I thought you could delve into this topic further if you're interested. And, well, I'm interested. So in this video, the question I would like to ponder is, to shame or not to shame? Should we be shunning artists who use AI in their creative process? And what is really considered acceptable and original when it comes to art? And my aim here is not to tell you what's right or what's wrong. I just want to basically share my perspective as somebody who has been making art for a living for almost a decade. And I think it would be helpful to have an open discussion about it. But I know that this can be a bit of a heavy topic for some, so to make this video a little more cozy and a little more relaxing, I thought that maybe we could bake a cake together and go for a nature walk. To start things off, I would again like to officially state that I am not an AI expert, and these are merely my opinions at this current point in time as somebody who makes paintings for a living. I would also like to say that I am not a tech-savvy person and can't begin to understand the intricacies of how AI works, and I'm certainly not qualified to explain it to you. But I think I should provide a teeny tiny review of how AI makes art as a base for this discussion, which I ironically asked ChatGPT to explain to me in layman's terms. So, AI learns from examples that it finds on the internet and other data sets. It then turns a text prompt into mathematical ideas, so it kind of understands what shapes and colors and textures are needed to create the image that you want. It then starts with random noise, which is gradually sculpted into a detailed image through a process called diffusion. Did we get all that? And just to state the obvious, the difference between us and machines is that we have emotions and memories and beliefs and struggles and desires from which we create art, where AI is just generating combinations of patterns it learned from huge datasets without intention or understanding. Which is a pretty significant difference, if I do say so myself, and one of the reasons why I think that AI art can never replace art made by human people. But what are the implications of human people using AI as a tool in their art? And to explore this, I would like to use the following example. Back in the day, before everyone had access to a camera in their pocket, artists had no choice but to create from life. If you wanted to paint the mountains, you had to bring your art supplies outside. If you wanted to paint a portrait, you had to hire a model to sit for you in your studio. Some artists were able to paint from memory or create things that didn't exist, but if you needed a reference, which most artists do, you had to find it in the flesh, and I think that this was quite constraining. What if you were out and about in your everyday life and came across a scene that really struck you, like a stream of sunlight casting dramatic shadows over a cluttered table in a cafe, or an old couple having a picnic in the park? If you didn't have your painting supplies with you and didn't have a photographic memory, it would be very challenging to capture this on canvas. But with the invention of cameras, all of this changed. We are now able to capture everything with the click of a button and have the opportunity to take our images back to our studios and paint them. This has been a huge part of my creative process my entire career. I use my photography as reference for my paintings. The picture produced encompasses my experience in that moment, and the camera is merely a tool to capture it. I then translate this image into paint on a canvas and make adjustments where I see fit, and the end result is art. When I think of using AI to generate reference images for painting, I sort of see it in a similar way. The camera, which is a tool, is used to capture a scene or experience. And AI, which is also a tool, is used to capture an idea, which is your prompt. And in both scenarios, the result is used as one step in the creation of an artwork. I have personally used AI as a tool in 2 of my paintings, which were both commissions. In both scenarios, my client had an idea for the painting but could not provide me with a reference photo, and as a realist painter, I need a reference photo. So the first time, my client told me this really beautiful story of the day him and his wife started their relationship. It was raining and they were sitting in a car. Because of distance, things were a bit complicated, but they knew that they wanted to be together. They looked outside and on a nearby tree they saw some snails slowly climbing up, and that's when they said, if snails can climb trees, we can make this work. So it was then my job to turn this story into a painting. We agreed that the painting would be of the specific snail species, so I made a sketch of the composition I had in mind along with some other details like water droplets on the shells to indicate rain, and 2 larger snails and 3 smaller to represent the 3 children that they've had since. But after having the sketch approved, I was still faced with a dilemma, and that was, I still don't have a reference photo. So I had a decision to make. Do I spend days sifting through Google Images and patching together a reference on Photoshop that would likely not be very accurate, or do I save myself the hours and use AI as a starting point? And so I gave it a try. And with my prompts, these were the images I got, which were way off of my vision, but a good starting point nonetheless. I then used Photoshop to arrange the composition I had originally intended, and I finally had a good reference image for the painting, water droplets and all. And here's how the final piece turned out. The second time I used AI was actually for the commission I just finished. Again, my client had an idea for the painting, but this time it was he who made the prompt and provided me with the AI-generated image. There were some details missing, like a black dog, a woman in a country dress, and some grazing horses, but with a little bit of Photoshop magic, I was able to alter the photo to be much closer to his vision. And here's how that piece turned out. So, some of you may think less of me now for using AI to create art, but I think that there's some important things to note here. I didn't hurt anyone during this process. I made my clients very happy and was able to turn their visions into hand-painted works of art, and I saved myself a lot of time which I allocated to more important things like actually painting. But although I believe artists needn't find shame in using AI to help with their creative process, I also think that there's a bit of a gray area in what is considered right and wrong, or acceptable and unacceptable. And in my opinion, I think that honesty plays a big part. I'm often asked if I use a reference when painting, or if it's just my imagination or memory. I would never lie about this and tell somebody that I didn't use a reference when I actually did. In the same way, if somebody asked me if I used AI to create a painting, I also wouldn't lie. What I find unacceptable is when artists claim to have not used AI in the creation of their work when, in fact, they did. Not only because lying is unethical, but also because it's a disservice to your fellow artists. It's like if one person spends 3 months building a log cabin entirely by hand, and then another person comes along with a chainsaw and 2 sets of helping hands, completes the same project in a fraction of the time, but claims that they also built theirs alone entirely by hand. This discredits the first person's hard work, even if the end result is more or less the same. I think it's our responsibility as artists to be honest about our process if asked, but what isn't our responsibility is how people respond to the answer. And if somebody wants to throw shade on you for using a new and innovative tool that helps your artistic process, then that's kinda them problem. Times are changing and technology is evolving whether we like it or not, and I think it's our choice whether we accept or reject this. I don't think it's right to shame other people just because they don't share the same opinion. All this being said, my feelings become a little more complicated when the image that is generated by AI has either been made in the same style as another artist, or if your prompt actually includes the name of another artist. For example, writing the prompt, "Make an image of an underwater kingdom in the style of James Gurney," and then painting it stroke for stroke. On the one hand, I feel like this is absolutely not acceptable because the artist spent years working on developing their own artistic style only for a machine to be able to replicate it in a few seconds. The artist is not given the option to consent to having their work taken and manipulated for public use, and that feels very wrong. On the other hand, one of the ways that I've taught myself how to paint is to study the work of artists I love and try and replicate their style. So if I take my own reference photo but then paint it in the same style as another artist, how different is it really? And the AI example, isn't it sort of just eliminating one step in this process? I don't know. I recently reread the book Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon, which I made a video about that I'll put on the screen now. And the main message is basically that no art is original and that all creative work builds on what came before, and that we should embrace influence by studying the artists we love, understanding what makes their work great, and using that as inspiration in our own creations. And if AI can be used as a tool to help us do this on our journey to finding our own style, then is it really a bad thing? I don't know. I feel like I may not be explaining myself very well here, but I do know that I feel quite conflicted. What do you think? I guess to sum up my feelings on this subject, I don't think that using AI in your creative process makes you a fraud. What makes you a fraud is if you use it and then lie about it. And I also think it depends on what your intentions are when you use AI. Is it to evade having to come up with creative solutions, or is it to help you execute your own creative ideas, practice, and improve your art? Another thing that I have discovered in my ripe age of 31 years old is that your opinions are allowed to change. We can have a stance on a particular topic, but then change our minds after educating ourselves more, opening our perspectives, and having our own experiences. Personally, I don't like using AI in my process and would rather avoid it, but in the times that I have used it, like in the commissions that I mentioned earlier, it was really helpful. So yeah. Anyway, these are my thoughts on this topic today, and I would be interested in hearing yours. So you can go ahead and write them in the comments, but I know that this can be a heated discussion topic, so please be nice to me and to each other. My friends, thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, you can do that by hitting the subscribe button somewhere down there. And yeah, leave me a like if you want. And I hope that we see each other again very soon. Well, in fact, I'll see you in a couple weeks, okay? I've got a fun video coming up next. As you can see, it's that time of year, and perhaps my next video will be themed. This themed. You know what I'm saying. Okay, I'm Brooke Cormier, and I'll see you next time.